Welcome back to our final house party of our Forward series. That Heyo was amazing, by the way. It's a bit of a bummer, but the beauty of it is the Forward series continues on Sunday mornings. So it still has a few more weeks left. Trust me, these are just some of the best weeks, I promise you. John is absolutely killing it this series, and y'all got to be there if you haven't been there already. And if you have, you got to keep on going. Okay, let's move forward. See what I did there? Wink, wink. Like how I say wink, wink, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, we've been talking about moving forward as chaos, as a church, to the future that God has for us. And we're talking about going forward, and that means we're talking about growth. And growth always means moving from where we are to where God wants us to be. But to move forward, we all have to take our next steps. We can't stand still and move forward. We've got to put it in drive and go forward. So we are looking at a guy named Joshua in the Old Testament, and his story of leading the Israelite people. And God used Joshua to lead them forward into the promised land that he had for them. And going forward was not easy by any means for Israel. But we believe we can learn a lot as we move forward by looking at how God moved Joshua and the Israelites forward. So, week 1, we saw that we have to move forward with courage. We looked at Joshua chapter 1, where over and over again, God tells them to be strong and courageous. And the reason they can go with courage was because God was going with them. And the same reason applies to us today. Then, last week, we saw that we have to move forward by faith. We looked at Joshua chapter 3, where God splits the Jordan River so his people Israel can walk safely through to the promised land. But God didn't split the river, then have them step in and walk through. He told them to take a step of faith. And when their feet hit the water, then and only then would God move and do something miraculous. We saw that God often waits for us to take a step of faith within him before he moves. So we asked ourselves, where is God asking us to take a step of faith so that we can walk into something he has planned for us? This week, to wrap up our series here in Chaos, we're actually skipping over to chapter 10. After Israel crossed the Jordan River, they had to begin to fight their way through the land. People weren't super nice to them, honestly, so Israel is fighting their way through the promised land, and God is giving them victory after victory, just as he promised. He's going with them. And shocker, no one can stand against the God of the universe, so they're winning. And one enemy king heard about Joshua, he heard about Israel, he was a little scared. Dude was nervous, so he came up with this idea. He reached out to some other kings near him and he said, hey, help me take these guys out, let's form an alliance. So the 5 of them team up and attack one of Israel's friends and allies. And Israel, being the good friend that they are, they come to help out. And honestly, Joshua and Israel kind of lay the smack down on them. They completely kick their butts. Like, it's an absolute beat down of a battle. And God does some crazy things in this battle. At one point, Joshua 3 tells us that Joshua 10 tells us that giant hailstones are falling from the sky and taking out the enemy. So Israel is winning. If giant hail is helping you from the sky, you are definitely winning that battle. So they're finishing off this battle, but the day is ending. It's beginning to get dark, and once it gets dark, there's no way Israel can finish off this enemy. The enemy could regroup, they could sneak around them, just do stuff like that. And so Joshua realizes the Israelites need more time. So Joshua prays a bold prayer, a kind of ridiculous prayer that he asks God to do something absolutely crazy. And it says this in Joshua 10, verses 12 and 13. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the presence of Israel. Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and the moon over the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on its enemies. Okay, so Joshua looked to heaven and asked God to stop the sun. He was like, hey God, it would help us a bunch if you could just stop the rotation of the earth and keep the sun right there so that it would stay light out a little bit longer so that we could have more time so that we could finish this battle. And the craziest thing is that God did it. The sun stopped. It stayed light out and Israel defeated the enemy. That was a bold prayer by Joshua. He didn't ask God for something small. He knew he was speaking to the God of the universe who is capable of anything. So he asked for something God-sized. As we go forward, we are going toward God-sized things. We are asking God to do things that only he is capable of. Our mission is to flip the spiritual climate of Camden County schools, to see more and more disconnected and unfulfilled students find a full life in Jesus. You've heard that 100 times by now. And it's fine for us to ask God for help in small details of life. Listen, God cares about the small things. But he's also the God of the universe, capable of things like making the sun stand still. And here's the thing, I think we very often aim small when it comes to praying and expecting God to show up. We aim small and we miss small. We sometimes think, hey, if I ask God for this small thing in my life, it won't be that big of a deal if it doesn't happen. So many of our prayers are timid and shallow and easy, but we have the creator of the universe, and he says he is with us. So we should aim big, beyond big. We should ask God to show up and to do things that seem crazy, like stopping the sun, or like changing all of Camden County for Jesus. When I was an intern in North Carolina, we did a series with our students called Go Big. We shot a great video, and I'm sure it's still on YouTube somewhere, where we got myself, a giant, and a student named Will, who was on the smaller side, and we did a whole video of him doing normal things and then me replacing them with big things. So Will was like eating a small veggie for dinner, and then I came in, threw his plate against the wall, and I dropped a whole rotisserie chicken on the plate and just yelled like, "Go big!" I think at one point I used a giant toilet brush as a toothbrush, and I put a whole tube of toothpaste on there. It was gross. I think it was clean. At one point, there was a synchronized swimming sequence. It was amazing. An amazing video. But in that series, we talked about believing that God can use you to do really incredible things for him and asking him to do it and then going for it. As we go forward, we are not aiming small. We are trying to ask God intimidating prayers, asking him to do incredible things. We don't want to just pray that God gives us an A on the test that we totally forgot about and never studied for. We want to pray and ask God to change all of Camden County, to use us to flip the spiritual climate, to use us to see more and more friends come to know him and what a full life actually is like as you follow Jesus. And we believe the God who's going with us will show up and do incredible things like stop the sun. So, what is a God-sized dream that you have never prayed and you need to pray so that God might fight for you? And do we believe he can actually do it?
Have a good day and a good afternoon.
Love it. It's coming straight from Hazel Dodd. The Hazel Dodd.